What is up, everyone? Ryan right here. So I wanted to do a little live streaming here today. Talk about the kind of the Trump narrative. So first off, I think Trump has lost. I think he will lose in the courts. It doesn't seem that there's a path for victory. The handling of said loss has been what's interesting because there hasn't been from day one a willingness to discuss whether or not Trump's claims were adequate. And I'm not saying that they are. It's just to dismiss them when you have a large portion of the populace voting for him, it seems really odd. But that's not really the point. The point I want to get to is it's stuff like this that's going to continue to give the Trump supporters the thought that hey, maybe there was a little bit more going on. And I'm talking about today from the Wall Street Journal, CDC finalizing recommendation to shorten COVID-19 quarantines. Currently, it's a 14 day, I believe, and now they're talking about going between 7 and 10 days. This is the type of stuff, and you might be saying, "Well, the news comes and the agencies act when they got to act," but these are the types of things that are going to continue to give the Trump supporters who think that the election was stolen, the idea that it was stolen. Because here you are, you're sitting here, within a few weeks after the election, putting out stuff that says, "Okay, well, we went from 14 days to 7 or to 10," and so you know, if Trump is the one pushing for this, it's not a good look for him because he should have pushed for it before the election. If he's the one who, if it's just the CDC people doing their thing, then it looks bad. It makes it look as if now that the election's over, there was a lot of people on the Trump side who thought, well, once the election's over, the coronavirus is going to go away. And since the election's ended, we've had three vaccines in the U.S. have been announced, and a couple internationally that are talking about being close. And now we have the CDC saying, well, 14 days. 14 days is a little bit much. It's not quite 14 days. We're going to look at maybe 7 to 10. And I have no idea what the right number is. I just find it fascinating that within 3 weeks or so of the election, we miraculously have discovered that now we can cut 4 days off of the quarantine timing. On top of that, you have states who are saying, well, you can't, we're going to cut off alcohol sales at 5 o'clock tomorrow night and, don't have Thanksgiving and don't do this. So you have these contradictory messages where, on some level, the states are sitting here saying, we're going to impose our will on the people. We're going to keep them from getting out. And then at the federal level, you have a mixed message of, well, is it 7 days? Is it 10 days? Is it 14 days? I've often wondered, COVID aside, how accurate these time frames are. So if you look at it, say, well, if you had the flu, I don't know what it is for the flu. I'm just making this up. If you have the flu, you'd be symptom free for 24, 48 hours, whatever it is. And I've often wondered, like, how accurate is that? Is it, obviously at 24 hours, the flu doesn't magically go away. So is it 22 hours? Is it 20 hours? I'm assuming that there is some safety baked into that number. So, for instance, maybe it's 12 hours, but they say 24 just because it makes sense to kind of double it. So I've wondered with the COVID stuff as well, how do we get to 14 days? And, now that we're at 7 to 10, or that's what we're going to go for, how accurate is that? Is it really 7 to 10, or is it more like 2 to 3 days, but they say 7 to 10 to be safe? So these are the types of things that if you are a Trump loyalist, you're a Trump supporter, you think the election was stolen, the more that the vaccines come out after the election, the more that you sit here and you see the quarantine period changing and changing for less quarantine times, you start to wonder, well, how bad was COVID? Because if you really believe COVID was this bad for this long, what new evidence has come that miraculously came after election? To be clear, it is entirely possible that this is all new evidence and that people are finding this out. It just seems completely unlikely at this point in the game, based upon the fact that we have multiple vaccinations, and now the CDC releasing this, that all of a sudden all of the things that the Trump supporters said about COVID-19 isn't as bad as we're being led to believe. High survival rate. Now all of a sudden it feels like that's beginning to become the narrative on some level. Of course, you have Dr. Fauci saying we're gonna mask up forever and stuff like that. So we'll see how it shakes out. I just don't know how the media expects the Trump supporters to move forward, how the federal government expects the Trump supporters to move forward if they keep doing things that is going to feed into the idea that Trump stole the election. So, for the sake of people moving forward, you would want some of these announcements just to be pushed further down the road. You're not going to appease everyone, but that's the case. A couple of stories I wanted to talk about. This next one was from the Daily Poster. Tucker, let me see, let me pull up here on the screen. Let me do this. Share screen on the tab. There it is. Get a sip of water while that's up. So this piece is criticizing Tucker Carlson for taking, I think it's $70,000 for giving a speech to the Carlyle Group. Now, let me just say this before going further. The Carlyle Group wants to pay me $70,000. I will be there tomorrow. I will miss Thanksgiving and Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year, President's Day, Martin Luther King Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, whatever days we have between now and next year for 70K. I'll happy come give a speech about whatever it is. So just wanted to make sure that there's no confusion there. But beyond that, it's interesting because Tucker Carlson, I don't know what he makes. I'm assuming millions of dollars a year. He's not making what I'm making, obviously. So he's making millions of dollars a year for being on Fox, on the highest rated show, or was at least last time I looked. And he's been critical of Obama for taking $400,000 for giving a speech to Wall Street. Now, let's put the Tucker Carlson angle aside for a second. The issue when you look at presidents, senators, congressmen, former presidents, senators, congressmen, etc., getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to give speeches, you at least have to wonder why. Why are these groups bringing these people in? Now, it could be, I'm not at these groups, it could be that Obama is coming in and saying, well, listen, based upon what I understand, if you were, China's expecting to do this, or, this African nation's expecting to do that. And from the Carlyle Group trying to invest, large amounts of money across the world or in U.S. projects, that could be valuable information. So there is some potential where you could sit there and go, you know, the former presidents or senators would have this information. So that's that. The other thing is that, these rich private equity types, they got a lot of money, they can spend a lot of money, maybe it's a tax write-off. The other thing is, it's just kind of cool to say, yeah, I heard the president speak. So if Obama was down here in Granbury at the square giving a speech about whatever, and it was reasonable for me to attend. I'll give you a story. I almost attended a Joe Biden speech one time. I was in California at this conference years ago. I think he was still VP. Yeah, he was definitely VP. And he was in for this conference, and we were going to go because we had to pay for the conference. I could care less about what Joe Biden had to say, but to say I saw the vice president speak in person, sure. We got there. It was the last day of the conference, and the line was wrapped around the door. They're checking all your bags, and we said, it's not worth it. So, if Obama was in town, it was something like that. I probably wouldn't go from the standpoint of dealing with the security measures. But if Obama was in town, I could go and I could hear him have to speak, and it would be pretty easy to get in and out. I would definitely go. I'd go hear Trump. I'd go hear Bush. I'd go hear a bunch of those guys. Just to say I heard them. So there is that element where, if you're the Carlyle Group, you're sitting there going, well, we brought in the former president. We're kind of the best of the best. We bring in the best. We hear from all the top names. Everyone markets themselves that way. So there are some legit reasons why you might want to bring in a president or president or a senator or some high-ranking official. That there are reasons. However, there also are reasons why you might want to bring them in that have nothing to do with any of those things. So, in other words, if you are one of the people, and we're going to talk about BlackRock here in a second, if you're one of the people who, you're the CEO of BlackRock or of Carlyle Group, and you want to get pressure to get a policy passed or prevented or whatever, you're going to reach out to senators through lobbyists or however those things are done through the back channels and make sure that the best you can that the bill is passed or not passed that helps you out in the most way possible. Now, this might be done by hiring a senator's best friend, his girlfriend on the side, his kid, whatever, hiring some consulting company his buddy runs. You might do that, right? But that might not be enough. It might be understood that once he gets out, you're going to bring him in, you're going to drop 400K in his pocket, and he's going to give you the speech. And it could be all of those things, right? It could be that the senators and presidents have things of value to say. They pretend they should. They've been in office. They have all these briefings. So you got that, rubbing elbows with the elite. The elite like to hang out with the elite. They're not calling me to speak for a reason, a lot of reasons. And it could be that you're paying off an old debt. Obama did this. Let's go ahead and bring him in because what we've made hundreds of millions of dollars on this deal. Obama was instrumental. And the final thing is that you might use Obama as a lobbyist as well, right? You bring Obama in and you say, "Hey, listen, Obama, we really want this bill to pass, but Congressman so and so is really holding it up. It'd be nice to get this thing done." Well, you just paid him 400K. He might pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Congressman, whatever, we need to get this bill done. We need to get this thing pushed through." So there's a lot of reasons, some good, some bad, that you might see politicians brought in to speak at the Carlyle Group, BlackRock, wherever. Because most of these politicians are corrupt, I at least tend to believe that they're probably more nefarious than they are good reasons. Now, Tucker Carlson. The question is what could Tucker Carlson do for you? Now, Tucker Carlson can do something. Make no mistake about it. Tucker Carlson has the biggest, cable news show that I'm aware of. If not the biggest, one of the biggest, and he's an opinion guy. So bringing Tucker Carlson in for 70K very well might get you a positive media coverage when you have some big project coming up, or give your competition negative media coverage. And so I don't think it's entirely um, wrong to question Tucker Carlson's getting paid to do these things. However, I do think it's slightly different than this. So I don't watch a lot of cable news. It's kind of hard for me to keep up with everyone. Brett Baer, who's the Wallace guy, the lady that did the second debate from USA Today. Those are all news, Sally. Some those are all news people. Tucker's an opinion person. So when you're watching Tucker, you should understand that Tucker, just like I am, is giving an opinion of what they think is going on. I might be right, I might be wrong. I'm trying to tell it to you the best I believe it, but it's my opinion, and it's not just the bare bone facts, right? It's not Bob woke up today, Bob did this, Bob went to the White House, Bob came home, that was his day. It's my commentary on why Bob did those things. Here's what we know to be fact. Here's what we want to tell you about, and here's my opinion. So there's a difference between watching Tucker Carlson and a traditional news publication. So when you watch Tucker Carlson, would it surprise me at all that he's being influenced by these speeches to give an opinion contrary to what he believes, or influence his opinion? No, no. And in fact, getting if Carlyle Group in this case, paid me $70,000, I would be less likely to come out and to crucify them, unless of course their competitor was gonna pay me 100,000, right? So you can see how this works. So I don't think it's a one-to-one, but I do think it's interesting. But the bigger point is that when you watch Tucker, it's Tucker's opinion. And maybe he's being honest in his opinion, maybe he's not. We don't know. But you are getting an opinion. It's not news. Whereas the policymakers, Obama, if Obama were to call someone, you assume that he has the ability to call a congressman, a senator, president, whatever, foreign leader, and to get things done that Tucker can't. Tucker has some sway with probably some smaller politicians, maybe some of the senators. Maybe he can call Trump occasionally and to kind of push him one way or another. Obama has exponentially more power, which is why Obama's getting 400,000 and Tucker is getting 70,000, despite the fact that Tucker has a more popular show than whatever Obama's doing on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, Tucker's opinion is influencing more people than Barack Obama's. Barack Obama, I don't know if he tweets or whatever, but he's not in the public eye on a daily basis. Tucker is out 5 times a week at least. I don't know if he does a weekend show or not, but 5 times a week. I don't think he does radio. So 5 times for an hour or whatever his show is, he's out in the public eye, influencing people on a regular basis. Whether you agree or disagree, he's influencing people because the people who disagree with him respond to what he says on a daily basis. So Tucker's opinion is actually on a daily basis more influential. Now, when Obama speaks, it is more influential on those few times because it is more rare. And anyways, so the disparity in the pay makes sense. But the concern is warranted from Tucker's standpoint that why in the world is Obama getting paid $400,000? And this goes back to the tax stuff. When Trump released his tax return, also Trump CPA, feel free to call me. I'm looking for tax advice. I haven't paid $750 in taxes in years, so I'd love to pay that little. So Trump CPA, if you're out there, let me know. But this goes back to the Biden-Trump tax deal. So Trump hadn't released his taxes. He never will. And so you shouldn't expect it. And you never should have expected it. He's just not going to do it. Biden did release it. I think he paid, what, 2-3 million in taxes. That was the news story. Like, what is Joe Biden doing to bring in this kind of money? Well, he's going around giving these type of speeches, whatever business investments he may have. Um, and it makes sense for Biden to be willing to release his taxes because he understands that his taxes had to be set up in a certain way so when he releases them, there's nothing there, right? There's no there. If you're a career politician, releasing your taxes doesn't mean a whole lot. You help write the tax code. You can talk to the IRS. You can get advice. So this whole narrative around the taxes has been interesting because the question never was really put to Biden is how did you earn so much money? You've been in the Congress, I mean, in Senate and the vice president for 50 years, 45 years, 47 years, whatever it was. How on earth were you paying this much money in taxes? Well, it's obvious he's getting speeches like this. And so then the question of corruption, which is not asked, is well, if you're paying this much in taxes, should we be worried about who's influencing you? So if you remember during the tax, um, when the Trump when Trump's taxes were released a few months ago, or allegedly released, we never saw them. The question was, well, who does Trump owe this money to? Who in the world could Trump owe this money to? This is a threat to our democracy that Trump owes this money. Okay, Trump owes money. It could be to Russia. It could be to China. It could be to whomever. Who does he owe this money to? And he needs to explain this right now. Well, the opposite is true as well. How does Biden earn so much money? So think about it like this. If I knew that Bob was going to run for city council or whatever, and I gave Bob money today, I hired him as a consultant for some big job or to come give a speech for $100,000. Don't think that that's not a debt. That is a debt owed that you're expected to pay back. And so this narrative around how we view taxes and all this stuff, it's really quite silly and um, frustrating. Oh, one more on Trump winning the election. Sorry, let me pull this back up here. Now this cat, I can't say his name. I think it's Christoph, Nicholas Christoph. I'm not sure. I read him occasionally in the New York Times. He is a liberal, progressive, something hack. He's not very good, not a very smart guy. But he writes for the New York Times, so he gets a lot of publicity. I mean, he can put together sentences and stuff like that better than I can. So he's got that on me. But as far as being an intellectual, he's some of the stuff is pretty bad. Headline reads, when Trump was right and many Democrats were wrong. Now, here's the first sentence. Some things are true, even though President Trump says them. Okay. This is an interesting way to phrase it. Some things are true, even though President Trump says them. A lot of things are true, regardless of who says them. 2 plus 2 is 4. The sky is blue. The earth revolves around the sun. There's a litany of things that are actually true. Um, and most of the things, granted, that Trump says are actually true, right? They're actually true. It's the few things that he says that we argue over. And so, if you were sitting around Trump on a daily basis, you would probably hear a lot of truths. The question is does he lie at a higher percentage than maybe other people or other politicians? However, this is talking about schools reopening. Now, this has nothing to do with Trump. Trump was just telling you what was true, which is the schools should be open. Um, and, you know, the reason it became a partisan issue has everything to do with how going back to the election being stolen, Trump voters feel as if the election was stolen. The media has lied to them. They were frustrated with what's going on. Um, all of those things. And now here you go with another admission in the New York Times. It's an opinion piece. It's like Tucker Carlson. Take it for what it is. But another piece from a prominent Democrat saying that, you know what? Schools should be open. Well, okay, schools should be open, and we're reducing the quarantine time. Again, what do you think Trump voters are going to think? Do you think that they are going to sit here and go, "Wow, these Democrats have really come around"? No, they're going to think that you sabotaged this, and that's whether you did or not isn't really relevant at this point. It isn't really relevant. That's what people are going to think, and you have put yourself in this position for the next 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever years for the country to feel this way. 2, 3, a couple more stories. Back to Joe Biden and getting paid off. I'll just tweet this out. There's a story from, where is this from? The American Prospect. BlackRock executive Brian Deese could get major White House position. Surprise, 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 because that goes back to the speech stuff. Then let's see here. Now, if you're a reader to my newsletter, you will know that this is true. And what that is that vaccinations, from the standpoint of mandatory vaccinations, something a lot of people are concerned about, those are most likely going to come in the form of international travel, right? International travel. And this isn't the only one. I think there's another airline who said this as well. Um, and so what you're going to see is countries, because countries have done this before, right? So I've been to Africa. You had to get shots to go. I think it was typhoid, or I can't remember what it was. A couple shots had to go to Zambia or Namibia. Namibia, I can't remember which one. But anyways, had to get some shots to go there. You had to get shots to go certain places. That's how the world works and how it has worked. And so it's not surprising to see that vaccinations will be mandatory for international flights. A, they're longer typically, but B, they are going to be required to enter countries. That's just whether you agree with the vaccination policy or whatever. It's just the way it's going to be. Is that people are going to say, you know what, we don't want you coming in our country without a COVID vaccine, and they're probably going to have somewhat support from that. So the airlines is where it'll start at, because that's how most international travel happens. Obviously, maybe in Europe or something like that, where you have a little bit different setup. I don't know. You might see it played out a little bit differently, checkpoints at the border or whatnot. But international flights in and out of the U.S., I would expect to start seeing this to be a real talking point about the airlines requiring vaccinations. Now, the question will be is, can especially in the U.S., will you be able to get away with not wearing a mask if you've had a vaccination? And that's going to be where you're going to find people that might say, you know what, I have 13 hours. I got to go get the vaccine. Don't have to wear a mask anymore. I don't know. A lot to be done about the vaccine and how it will work out. So 2-0. Two more stories. This is from NBC News. 8 million Americans slipped into poverty amid coronavirus pandemic. New study says researchers looked at the devastating financial effect the pandemic has had on Americans, with Blacks, Latinos, and children faring the worst. This is the least surprising story ever, right? Am I right? Like who is stunned to hear that 8 million Americans have slipped into poverty? I'm surprised it's actually not higher, and the number probably will grow as time goes on. The lockdowns, I've said it like this multiple times. I'll say it again. You've seen Jurassic Park. At the end of Jurassic Park, when they're trying to decide what to do, and they say, "Well, let's turn off the master switch. They can't hack the computer. Let's turn off the master switch." And they said, "Well, what happens? We don't know. We've never done that before. We've never turned off the master switch." Okay, we don't know what's going to happen when we turn it back on. Theoretically, things should happen. Well, in the U.S., we turn off the master switch. We've never turned it back on. We've kind of turned on a bunch of other little switches, and not just the U.S., it's globally. And so now you're at the spot where people are going to suffer disproportionately at different rates, right? So if you're in New York and you've faced prolonged lockdowns, or Los Angeles prolonged lockdowns, or you're going back into lockdowns, it's going to impact you disproportionately than it would in some places that have not done as restrictive lockdowns, restrictive measures. And so 8 million Americans, and this is not just an American story. There are a lot of stories globally about people who are facing starvation, losing their homes and stuff like that, because they went with the narrative. They went with the shutdown, and it's quite tragic to see it all play out. Okay, one more. I said two more things, but one more. I got to go. Um, okay, this is from former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. Okay. Mattis says he hopes Joe Biden takes America first out of national security strategy. Mattis served as defense secretary for President Trump from January 17 through January 19. Okay, listen, this is the epitome of what is wrong with the military industrial complex. Jim Jeffrey, diplomat, just came out and said the other day that they lied to Trump about the troops in Syria. They made up how many there were. All that stuff. Hey, we've played a shell game, I think is what he called it. So Trump would not know how many troops were actually in Syria. Trump's the commander in chief. If you read John Bolton's book, which I encourage everyone to do, you should read John Bolton's book. Bolton critiques Trump over, and I'll tweet it out as well. The room where it happened. You know, Bolton routinely critiques Trump for all of these missteps. And guess what? All of those missteps have not led to a single war. Trump signed, there have been massive peace deals, whatever you want to say Trump's responsibility is that during that. And I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. They just have happened under Trump's administration. Um, whatever you want to say, we're not at war with North Korea. We're not at war with China. We're in a trade war. Okay. We're not at war with, we haven't gone to more war with Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria. All of those places we've pretty much for the last 4 years done what we've done. We've dropped a few bombs. We did kill a general. Fought ISIS a little bit more, but more often than not, Trump has been a dove than a hawk. And someone like Mattis, they hate that. They hate it. And if you read Bolton's book, what you come away with is John Bolton didn't read his own book because he says a lot of things that are baffling for someone who would have read his own book. But more importantly, Bolton is wrong all the time. John Bolton is routinely wrong. He is wrong over and over and over and over and over again in his own book, not factually. I don't know how factually accurate he is when he's talking about the things that happened with President Trump behind closed doors. I have no idea, but assuming that he's being somewhat truthful, he critiques Trump for all these foreign policy mistakes, and they've never mattered. They've never mattered, not one time. Trump's foreign policies have never been a problem as far as the war state, the military industrial complex. Those people, the war state goes, they don't matter. They haven't mattered. We're not sitting here with multiple 9/11 type attacks under Trump's administration. And there's a weird sense from the elite, the political elite, that if we're not in everyone else's business, then we're in a problem. I think Trump's foreign policy on some level has been good, some level has been bad, right? I think he points out a lot of problems with China, with Germany, with Russia. I think he points those out. I think his solutions most of the time are stupid. I mean, I don't, but they're not stupid in the way that Mattis or Bolton or these other guys might criticize them. They're stupid in the way that it's just not going to work. Like, I'm sorry, Trump, it's not going to work. So, anyways, that is it. Let's see here if I can pull this up real quick here, and I will tweet out a link to a free trial to the newsletter, which will be off this week. Will be back next week, and so folks can check that out with a 14-day free trial. Here we go. There that is. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep climbing.